Hello everyone. Today we'll discuss about the respiratory system. Respiratory system is one of the most important system, which is meant for the respiration. The respiration is a process of the internal respiration and the external respiration. This respiration is most important because of the gases. So we need gases for the metabolic actions, like oxygen for all the metabolic actions. Okay, and the different types of the organs are present in this respiratory system, including of the all those organs. It is called as a respiratory system. The organs which are functioning for the respiration, all those are included, and it maintains a system that is called as respiratory system. And this respiratory system is mainly divides into two types. One is external respiration and another one is internal respiration. External respiration in the sense exchange of the gases from the external atmosphere to lungs is called as external respiration. External atmosphere to till the lungs is called as external respiration. And the internal respiration in the sense from the lungs to target tissue. From the lungs to target tissue, exchange of the gases in between the lungs and the tissues inside of the body it is. That is called as internal respiration. And this respiration is in two phases. One is inspiration and another one is expiration. Inspiration in the sense taking of the gases inside. From atmosphere to taking of the gases inside is called as inspiration. And the expiration is nothing but the process of the gases, exchange of the gases. So in between the lungs comes outside is called as expiration. Inspiration in the sense taking of the gases inside, and expiration is nothing but taking of the gases outside. Okay, taking out expiration, taking in inspiration. Okay, right. And here this, if you see what are the parts involved in the respiratory system in the sense, the first one is the nose. Nose contains two nostrils. Okay, two nostrils, and then nasal cavity and nasopharynx, and after that pharynx, and next larynx, and after that trachea, after that bronchi, and next bronchioles, and from this bronchioles and the bronchi, this is the part of the lungs. That in the sense what? Trachea and then the lungs. Nose with the nostrils, nasal cavity, and next one is nasopharynx, pharynx, larynx, trachea, and then lungs. Lungs includes bronchi, bronchioles, alveoli, alveolar sacs. This is what the respiratory system. A pair of the lungs are present in the thoracic cavity. In the thoracic cavity, a pair of lungs are present. So these lungs, one is in right side and another one is left side. On the left side lung, with the cardiac impression, that in the sense heart is situated, so that there is a cardiac impression with the left lung. Okay, so that is what this functional anatomy of the respiratory system. And if you see the respiratory unit, okay, so that includes the respiratory bronchioles. Respiratory bronchioles in the sense in the lungs. So when the bronchi divides into the parts, that is called as respiratory bronchioles. Okay, and next one is alveolar ducts. So where the gases are stored and where the gases comes in the ducts, that is called as alveolar ducts. And next, alveolar sacs. Alveolar sacs in the sense where the exchange of the gases takes place in the lungs is called as alveolar sacs. And next, antrum and alveoli. Alveoli is nothing but where the separation of the gases. it separates all the gases into it divides. So like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, like that it divides. That is what the respiratory unit. And next one is, so if you see this diagram, we'll come to know about everything. So terminal bronchioles and the alveolar sacs, anthem, alveoli, and all the structures will come to know so in this diagram. Okay, and next one is respiratory membrane. Respiratory membrane is a membranous structures so through which the exchange of the gases occurs. So where the exchange of the gases occur, that is called as respiratory membrane. So where it occurs, in the sense in the alveoli and alveolar sacs. In between this, the gases exchange takes place. Okay, right, and come to the next one. So there are some of the functions. Actually, respiratory system function is respiration, but some of the non-respiratory functions of the respiratory systems are there. This is most important. Okay, so if you see that non-respiratory functions of the respiratory system, the first one is olfaction, smell. So taking of the smell is the one of the function, and next one is vocalization. So while talking, so just try to once practice it, because while you are talking, there is no respiration at that time. That in the sense, those gases are involved in the speech. That is what the vocalization. And next one is prevention of the dust particles. On the mucous membrane of the nose and the nostrils and the nasal cavity, there are hairs are present. Because of that hairs and the mucous membrane, the dust particles are stopped at the level of the nose only. Okay, so that's why it is prevention of the dust particles. And next one is defense mechanism. It undergo for the defense mechanism also. And next one is maintenance of the water balance. Like in the state of the vapors, it excretes while the water is more. So it excretes water also in the state of vapors. Okay, and if the water content is less, it stops. The vaporization is the stopped. Okay, and next one is regulation of the acid-base balance. It maintains acid-base balance also. Okay, and next one is anticoagulant function. It maintains the blood. Anticoagulant function also respiratory system maintains. Okay, and next one is secretion of the angiotensin converting enzyme. ACE, it is called as ACE. In the RAS mechanism, renin-angiotensin aldosterone system, ACE is secreted by the respiratory system. Okay, and next one is synthesis of the hormonal substances. It secretes hormonal substances like angiotensin 2 and angiotensinogen. Okay, and next one is respiratory protective reflexes. So like cough and so yawning, hiccoughs, all these comes under the respiratory protective reflexes. Okay, and next like cough reflex, sneezing reflex, and these following reflexes comes under this respiratory protective reflexes. Okay, and next if you see the circulation of the respiratory system, there is a specialized circulation. It is not undercomes for the systemic circulation. There is a specialized circulation that is called as pulmonary circulation. The pulmonary circulation is nothing but a circulation or the exchange of this blood in between that in the sense deoxygenated blood and the oxygenated blood, or the purified blood and the impure blood. Exchange of this blood and with the gases exchanges is called as pulmonary circulation. This pulmonary circulation includes two types of the vessels. One is pulmonary arteries and another one is pulmonary veins. Pulmonary arteries, generally the arteries function is it carries oxygenated blood. Whereas come to the pulmonary arteries, it carries so impure blood, that in the sense deoxygenated blood from the heart to lungs. And pulmonary veins, the vessels which carries pure blood, that in the sense oxygenated blood from the lungs to heart. That is what the circulation here. And in this pulmonary blood vessel, so if you see that, okay, so one is pulmonary artery and next one is bronchial artery, and next one is physiological shunt. Physiological shunt is nothing but where the arteries and the veins are attached together, that is called as physiological shunt. And the artery where situated in the bronchi, that is called as bronchial artery. And the pulmonary artery, so as I told, from the heart to lungs, which carries deoxygenated blood. Okay, and next one is, if you see this, so we'll come to know the glands which are present and how this capillary beds and what is the physiological shunt and how the arteries are situated and how the venous system is differentiated from the arteries, and all will this come to know in this diagram. How it go, the capillary bed and everything. Okay, and next one is, if you see the characteristic features of the blood vessels of the pulmonary circulation. So there is a thin wall in the pulmonary circulation, that in the sense in the pulmonary vessels there is a thin wall is present. The membrane, vessel membrane is very thin. And next one, it is thickness is only about the 1/3 thickness of the systemic aortic walls. If we compare with the systemic circulation with this pulmonary circulation, it is the thickness is 1/3 is present of the systemic circulation's arteries. Okay, and next one is highly elastic and more distinguishable. These are highly elastic nature in the, and the next more distinguishable it is. Okay, and next one is smooth muscle coat is not well developed in case of this, and the true arterioles have less smooth muscle fibers. So in this pulmonary circulation, and the pulmonary capillaries are larger than the systemic capillaries. Generally, the systemic capillaries should be large, but if we compare with this, that is very less when it compared with this pulmonary circulation. That in the sense, these are the larger capillaries are present in the pulmonary circulation. Okay, and next one is the pulmonary capillaries are also dense and have multiple atmospheres. And next, so the each alveolus occupies the capillary basket. There is capillary basket is present in each capillaries. Okay, and next one is vascular resistance is very less when it compared with the systemic circulation. Okay, and after that, low pressure system, there is a very low blood pressure is present in the pulmonary circulation. And next one is, if you see the pulmonary blood pressure, in case of the pulmonary arterial blood pressure, that is about, in case of systolic blood pressure is about 25 millimeters of mercury, and the diastolic blood pressure is about 10 millimeters of mercury, and the mean arterial pressure is about 15 millimeters of the mercury. Systolic is about 25 millimeters of mercury, diastolic is about 10 millimeters of mercury, and the mean arterial pressure is about 15 millimeters of mercury in case of the pulmonary artery pressure. Okay, and next, pulmonary capillary blood pressure is about the 7 millimeters of the mercury. Okay, and next, if you see the blood flow, how it regulated in the sense, this is regulated by the mainly 5 factors. So one is cardiac output shows its effect. The factors which affects on the pulmonary circulation is, one is cardiac output and vascular resistance and the nervous factors, and next chemical factors and the gravity and hydrostatic pressure. And if you see so how it has effects in this, in the sense, when there is inspiration, immediately there is decrease in the intrathoracic pressure. While the inspiration, so there is a decrease in the intrathoracic pressure. And after that, so the distension of the pulmonary blood vessels, and decreased pulmonary vascular resistance occurs immediately. And through that, increased pulmonary blood flow. The blood flow is increased immediately while the inspiration. Okay, and next one is, if you see diagram of this lungs, how with the circulation is there. In the sense, the area, there are three areas. The lung is divided into three areas. The uppermost part is completely zero circulation. There is no circulation at all in the upper part. And in the middle part, there is the intermediate blood flow, and in the base part, there is the heavy blood flow is present in the lungs. Okay, and next one is the mechanics of the respiration. Important one, mechanics of the respiration. How the inspiration is possible, how the expiration is possible. That is what the mechanics of the respiration. If you see this, so the respiratory movements are in two types, as we know. So one is inspiration and another one is expiration. See, in case of the males, the respiratory movements are abdominothoracic movement. That in the sense, first abdomen moved and then the thoracic cage is moved. In case of the males. And whereas come to the females, only thoracic movements are occurs. In case of males, abdominothoracic movements. And in case of females, only thoracic movements are present. That is the respiratory movements. And what are the muscles involved in the inspiration and expiration, that in the sense respiration? There are two types of the muscles are involved. One is inspiratory muscles and another one is expiratory muscles. And the muscles, if you see this in this diagram, okay, there are two types of the muscles are functioning for the respiration. One is intercostal muscles and the diaphragmatic muscles. And see this, intercostal muscles are divided into two types. So one is inspiratory intercostal muscles and expiratory intercostal muscles. If you see this, okay, so when this inspiration is occurs, immediately there is thoracic cavity is expands. Expansion of the thoracic cavity during the inspiration. That in the sense the muscle is stretched. Okay, and next external intercostal muscles gets contracted during the inspiration and the diaphragmatic contracts. That in the sense diaphragmatic muscles gets contracted during the inspiration. And if you see the expiration, the thoracic cavity muscles, that in the sense the thoracic cavity reduces, whereas come to the inspiration it expands, okay, and in here it is reduces, that in the sense goes inside, okay. And next immediately there is relaxation of the external intercostal muscles and the diaphragmatic muscles also relaxed during the expiration process, okay. And if you see this animated diagram, we'll come to know how the movements are possible. What is the thoracic cage movement? Okay, so how the thoracic cage is movement? That in the sense during the inspiration the thoracic cage is expands and during the expiration the thoracic cage is reduced. And next one is, so the movements of the lungs during the inspiration these are expands and during the expiration these are reduced. And next, surfactant, it's the most important factor which reduces the surface tension of the respiration, that in the sense lungs. It is a chemical substance. Surfactant is a chemical substance which reduces the surface tension of the lungs, is called as surfactant. Okay, right. And if you see the pressures, what are the pressures are present in the respiration? In the sense there are two types of the pressures are present. One is intrapleural pressure or intrathoracic pressure. Intrapleural pressure or intrathoracic pressure. That in the sense there is a thoracic cage and in that thoracic cage there is a fluid is present. That fluid is called as pleura or pleural fluid. In that pleural fluid, lungs are moved like this. A balloon-like structures of these lungs are situated both sides, left side and the right side. Okay, and next, so upon the lungs, what is the pressure is occurred? That in the sense which shows it pressure on the lungs, that is called as intrapleural pressure. Okay, within the pleura and within the thoracic cage there is a pressure on the lungs, that is called as intrapleural pressure or the intrathoracic pressure it is. And another pressure is intraalveolar pressure or the intrapulmonary pressure. that in the sense within the lungs, a pressure which occurred within the lungs in the alveoli while the exchanging of the gases. That is called as intra-alveolar pressure or intra-pulmonary pressure it is. Okay, and all this depends upon the compliance. What is compliance? In the sense, the compliance is the ability of the lungs. Compliance is the ability of the lungs and the thorax to expand, or it is the expansibility of the lungs and the thorax. The expansiveness, how much it can, that is called as the ability of the lungs and the thorax or the thoracic cage. So that is called as compliance. So the surfactant is the most important factor here. So which influences this compliance. Okay, and so it is defined as the change in the volume per unit change in the pressure. That is called as compliance. Okay, and next one is there is compliance is in two types. One is static compliance and another one is dynamic compliance. Static compliance in the sense during the normal respiration, that is called as static compliance. And next one is dynamic in the sense, so while performing something, that is called as dynamic compliance. Okay, and next one is compliance in the relation of the intra-alveolar pressure. If you see this, the compliance is the volume increase in the lungs per unit increases the alveolar pressure. When the compliance is increased, immediately the intra-alveolar pressure is also increased. Okay, and next one is, if you see the compliance of the lungs and the thoracic together, that is about 130 ml per 1 centimeter of the water pressure. 130 milliliters per 1 centimeter of the water. And next, compliance in case of the only lungs, alone lungs, that is about 220 milliliters per 1 centimeter of water. That is the alone lungs, it is more, that is about 220, and so together thorax, that is about 130. Okay, and next one is the compliance in the relation of the intrapleural pressure, that in the sense compared to the pleural pressure it is. Previous one is alveolar pressure, this one is pleural pressure. In relation of this, it is about together lungs and thorax, it is about 100 ml per 1 centimeter of the water pressure. And if it is lungs alone, that is about 200 ml per 200 milliliters per 1 centimeter of the water. That is the pressure according to the in the relation of the intrapleural pressure. Okay, and next one is the pulmonary function test. What is this pulmonary function test? So how the respiration system is working, how the respiratory system stands. So what is the abilities and what is the normal inspiration and what is the normal expiration and how we are taking in, how we are maximum taking in, how we are maximum and the forcefully we are taking out. Okay, so and everything comes under this pulmonary function test. That in the sense what? The ability of the lungs is called as, or the respiratory system is called as pulmonary function test, PFT it is. Okay, this is in two types. One is static lung function test and another one is dynamic lung function test. If you see the static lung function test, so in this there are lung volumes and the capacities are present. First one is tidal volume. What is tidal volume? Tidal volume is nothing but whatever the normal respiration we are taking in, that in the sense during the quiet respiration, so the normal respiration in that either the normal inspiration or the normal expiration is called as tidal volume. The amount of the air taking in during the quiet respiration is called as tidal volume. This is about 500 ml. Okay, and next one is inspiratory reservoir volume. That in the sense ability of the lungs, that in the sense, so after the tidal volume, that in the sense after the normal inspiration, how much amount of the air we are taking in with forcefully, that in the sense deep inspiration after the tidal volume. is called as inspiratory reserve volume. That in the sense, see, tidal volume in the sense normal inspiration. This is the tidal volume. And next, so inspiratory reserve volume, after the tidal volume, normal inspiration first and forceful inspiration. This is what the inspiratory reserve volume. And next, so comes to the normal tidal volume again. So in the respiration and normal respiration is there. That in the sense, so normal tidal volume occurs. And next is expiratory reserve volume. So after the normal expiration, during the quiet breathing, after the normal expiration, how much amount of the air we can expire forcefully. That in the sense, expiration, normal expiration first, and forceful expiration, how much we can. That is called as expiratory reserve volume it is. Okay, and next is the residual volume. After the forceful expiration also some amount of the air still present in the lungs. After the forceful expiration also some amount of the air is present in the lungs. That volume of the air is called as residual volume, and we can't measure it actually. Okay, still remain in the lungs. The air which is still remain in the lungs is called as residual volume. Okay, and next one is lung capacities. It includes with the static lung capacities. Okay, so that in the sense, in the combination of the two or the more lung volumes, the lung capacity, static lung capacities, which includes two or more lung volumes, is called as, so this one, lung capacities. In this, the first one is inspiratory capacity. Inspiratory capacity in the sense, so including of the tidal volume, normal inspiration, and then forceful inspiration, that in the sense tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume is called as this inspiratory capacity. How much we are taking in completely is called as inspiratory capacity. And next one is vital capacity. Vital capacity in the sense, so whatever we are taking in and whatever we are taking out. So normal breath, normal inspiration, forceful inspiration, and normal expiration and forceful expiration. All these are comes under the vital capacity. That in the sense, tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume plus expiratory reserve volume is called as vital capacity. Okay, and next one is functional residual capacity. Functional residual capacity in the sense, expiratory reserve volume, so forceful expiration after the normal quiet breath, forceful expiration plus residual volume is called as functional residual capacity. And next one is total lung capacity, including of the all lung volumes, that in the sense, so tidal volume plus inspiratory reserve volume plus expiratory reserve volume plus residual volume. This is what we call as total lung capacity, including of the all types of the lung volumes is called as total lung capacity it is. Okay, and next one is, so all these are measured by the spirometer. Thus it is called as Sherrington's spirometer, it is called as. Okay, so by that, so there is a mouthpiece is present, and while we are taking in the gases through the mouth only, okay, so there is a nose clip is present, and by that nose clip, so the nose is closed completely. Whatever the air we are taking in through the mouth itself, okay, there is a mouthpiece is present. Through the mouthpiece, so we'll take inside, and so the whatever amount we are taking in and whatever we are leaving out, and everything is recorded on the drum. That is what the recording, that is normal recording of the respiratory lung volumes and the capacities is called as eupnea. Eupnea in the sense normal lung capacities and the volumes recording is called as eupnea. And if you see that recording, it is like this. In this, the middle one is the tidal volume. Smallest one is the tidal volume, that red color one. Okay, so in the middle of this, most of the tidal volumes we can observe. So the upper stroke is called as inspiration and the downstroke is called as expiration. Normal tidal volume, and next one is, so upon that there is IRV, in the sense inspiratory reserve volume. After the tidal volume, how much amount of the air we can inspire, that is called as IRV. And including of this tidal volume plus IRV and the expiration and forceful expiration and comes to the normal, that is called as vital capacity. VC, there is a VC. Okay, so that is called as vital capacity. Tidal volume plus IRV plus ERV is called as vital capacity. And below that line there is RV. RV in the sense residual volume it is. In the sense, so which is not we can count. We can't measure it. That is called as residual volume, which remains in the lungs after the forceful expiration also. Okay, and next one is inspiratory capacity. Inspiratory capacity in the sense it is a capacity of the tidal volume plus IRV. And next one is expiratory reserve volume. The forceful expiration is called as expiratory reserve volume it is. And next one, so vital capacity, as we know, tidal volume plus IRV plus ERV. Okay, total lung capacity in the sense that includes of the all this tidal volume, inspiratory reserve volume, expiratory reserve volume and the residual volume. And functional residual capacity, it includes ERV, expiratory reserve volume and the residual volume. That is what this eupnea, it is normal one. Okay, so by this type of this spirometer and this spirogram, we'll come to know whether the person is normally taking the gases or not. That is what this eupnea or the spirogram. And so if you see the dynamic capacities, lung volumes and capacity, dynamic lung function test, forced vital capacity. The forced vital capacity in the sense forceful expiration during the how much we can expire after the forceful inspiration. After the forceful inspiration, forceful expiration, how much we can is called as forceful vital capacity. It includes FEVs, FEV in the sense forced expiratory volume. Okay, and next one is, so this forced expiratory volume is also called as timed vital capacity. It includes FEV1, FEV2 and FEV3. Forced expiratory volume 1, forced expiratory volume 2 and forced expiratory volume 3. Like this, 3 forced expiratory volumes are present. That's why it is called as timed vital capacity. Including of all these, that is called as forced vital capacity. Okay, and next one is peak expiratory flow rate. That in the sense, within 1 minute, how much amount of the air we can expire is called as peak expiratory flow. And next one is respiratory minute volume. That in the sense, within 1 minute, how much we are inspiring in and how much we are expiring out. The rate of respiration. It is about, normally the rate of respiration is about, so in between 12 to 18 times per minute. 12 to 18 times per minute. Within this 12 to 18 times, how much we are inspiring in and how much we are expiring out. That is called as respiratory minute volume. Okay, and next one is maximum breathing capacity or the maximum ventilation volume. That in the sense, within 1 minute, how much forcefully we can take in and how much forcefully we can leave out. forceful expirations and forceful inspirations. Forceful expiration and forceful inspirations within 1 minute is called as maximum breathing capacity. Okay, and next one is ventilation. This ventilation is in two types. One is pulmonary ventilation and another one is alveolar ventilation. Pulmonary ventilation in the sense till the lungs, and alveolar ventilation in the sense from the lungs. So pulmonary ventilation is from the external atmosphere to lungs, and alveolar respiration is the one from the alveoli to target tissues. That is called as alveolar ventilation. And here in this dead space. What is dead space? Dead space in the sense, this is in two types. One is anatomical dead space and another one is physiological dead space. First come to the anatomical dead space. See, so the air which is present in the lungs is undergo for its function. Isn't it? Okay, right. And whereas come to the anatomical dead space is while inspiring the gases from the nose to till the trachea, there is no use of that gas. Whatever the gas is, whatever the air present from the nose to till the trachea, there is no use with that gas or the air. That is called as the anatomical dead space. The air which is present from the nose to trachea is called as anatomical dead space. And next one is physiological dead space. The physiological dead space, it includes anatomical dead space also. Physiological dead space, it includes anatomical dead space also. And at the same time, so within the lungs, some amount of the air is not exchanged. That is called as physiological dead space. And also it includes anatomical dead space. Okay, the amount of the air which is not used during the exchanges, that is called as physiological dead space. And structurally, the air which is present from the nose to trachea is called as anatomical dead space. Okay, and next one is ventilation and the perfusion ratio. Ventilation in the sense respiration and the perfusion in the sense mixing. What is the ratio and what is the characters involved in between this? If you see this, the definition is the ventilation perfusion ratio is the ratio of the alveolar ventilation and the amount of the blood perfused in the alveoli. Amount of the blood is perfused in the alveoli is called as ventilation perfusion ratio, and it is expressed as VA per Q. Okay, and VA is alveolar ventilation and next Q is the blood flow, that is what the perfusion. This is about 0.84. 0.84 is the normal ventilation perfusion ratio. And next one, if we see the combinations of that in the sense what is inspiratory gases and what is expiratory gases and what it contains, what the alveolar gases contain, and if you see the compositions individually in this, if you see the compositions, whatever we are taking in and whatever we are leaving out, in that the gases are present like oxygen, carbon dioxide, nitrogen and water vapors, and so all these are present in the, so whatever we are taking in and we are leaving out. Okay, and if you see the inspired air, that in the sense from the atmosphere, okay, so that is about oxygen is about 20.84 milliliter percentage is present in the inspired air, and so carbon dioxide is about 0.04 milliliter is present, and the nitrogen is about 78.62 milliliter percentage is present, and next one is water vapors and the other gases are about 0.5% are present. Okay, and next one, the alveolar pressure, alveolar air contains, that in the sense the air which is present in the lungs is oxygen is about 13.6 percentage and the carbon dioxide is about 5.3 percentage and nitrogen is about 74.9 percentage and the water vapors and the other are about 6.2 percentage. And next, in case of the expired air, the oxygen is about 15.7 percentage and the carbon dioxide is about 3.6 percentage and nitrogen is about 74.5 percentage and water vapors and other gases is about 6.2 percentage. So this is what the composition and its contained in the air which we are taking in and what is present in the lungs and what is we are expired out. Okay, and next one is respiratory membrane. Respiratory membrane is one of the most important, so because through the respiratory membrane only there is exchange of the gases occurs. This respiratory membrane contains one basement membrane and the capillary endothelium, and next interstitial space is present after the basement membrane. See the diagram clearly, and the alveolar epithelium is present and the fluid layer, and after that surfactant is present. A closed surfactant is present on the mucous membrane. Mucous membrane with surfactant and the fluid layer is present and the alveolar epithelium is present, and next one is the interstitial space is present and the basement membrane with the capillary endothelium. That is the respiratory membrane. Okay, and if you see this layers and what it contains and what are the functions of that, if you see the alveolar portion, so the layers are present. Monomolecular layer of the surfactant is present and next one is thin fluid layer is present and alveolar epithelial layer is present in case of alveolar portion. So what? Monomolecular layer with surfactant and the thin fluid layer, and next one is alveolar epithelial layer. Three layers are present in the alveolar portion, and in between the alveoli and the capillary portion, so the interstitial space is present. And next one is in the capillary portion, the basement membrane and the capillary endothelial endothelial cells are present. Totally 6 types of the layers are present in the respiratory membrane. Okay, and next one is diffusion of the gases. How this diffusion of the gases in the sense, so how the oxygen is diffused, how the carbon dioxide comes out, and so all these are just because of the during the systemic circulation, coronary circulation and the pulmonary circulation. In between that, the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide, so while going inside or the outside, that is about 0.2 millimeters of the mercury, and the partial pressure of the oxygen is about 160 millimeters of the mercury. Okay, and next at the level of the systemic circulation, in case of veins, the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is about 46 millimeters of mercury and the partial pressure of the oxygen is about 40 millimeters of the mercury in case of veins. And in case of arteries, the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is about 40 millimeters of the mercury and the partial pressure of the oxygen is about 100 millimeters of the mercury. And by these pressures, it undergo for the diffusion of the gases, oxygen and the carbon dioxide. And if you see, so while taking in or out, so the partial pressure of the oxygen is about 21 millimeters of the mercury and the carbon dioxide is about 0.04 millimeters of mercury. And next, during the systemic circulation, so in the veins, that is about 6 millimeters of mercury for the oxygen partial pressure, and for the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is about same 6 millimeters of the mercury in case of the venous system, and in case of identically in the arterial system, the partial pressure of the oxygen is about 13 millimeters of the mercury, and in case of the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is about 5.3 millimeters of the mercury. And next one is transportation of the gases. If you see this transportation of the gases, this is in two ways. One is transportation of oxygen and transportation of the carbon dioxide. If you see the transportation of the oxygen, this is in two ways. One is in the simple physical solution form, and another one is in the combination of the hemoglobin. In the simple solution form, in the sense it directly goes through the blood, and so if in the combination of the hemoglobin, in the sense it combines with the hemoglobin and it forms oxyhemoglobin, and where it requires, it leaves there, hemoglobin leaves the oxygen at the target tissues. Okay, and this is mainly depends upon the partial pressure of the oxygen, by the partial pressure of the oxygen in the arterial system and in the venous system. And next one is, see this, so how the oxygen is exchanged from the lungs to alveoli to the blood, and where it diffused with the blood, and where the oxygen is binds with the blood, and all we can come together in this diagram. And if you see this, so the oxygenated blood, so first the from the deoxygenated blood, the carbon dioxide is leaved out in the alveolar sacs, and immediately there is the oxygen is binds with the blood, that in the sense with the hemoglobin. And next one, in the alveoli, the oxygen is separated from the all gases and it binds with the hemoglobin at the alveolar sacs. And so if you see the hemoglobin oxygen dissociation and the association curves, okay, so where it completely depends upon the, so normally, so how it binds with the hemoglobin. So normally the blue color line shows normal dissociation, and if it is shifted to left and if it shifted to right, some of the causes are there. If you see the causes of this, when the 50% of the oxygen is saturated with the blood, is called as P50. The partial pressure of the oxygen at the level of 50% of oxygen is saturated with the blood is called as P50. It is okay, and so that is what the P50, and it is about 25 to 27 millimeters of mercury. The partial pressure of the oxygen, that is P50. And next one is, so what are the factors affecting this oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve? In the sense, shifted to left association are the acceptance of the oxygen, and shifted to right indicates dissociation of the oxygen from the hemoglobin. Shifted to left is association of the oxygen, and shifted to right is dissociation of the oxygen in that curve. And shifted to right, what are the conditions in the shifted to right? In the sense, decrease the partial pressure of the oxygen is the first condition, and next, so increases the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide. So when the partial pressure of the oxygen is decreased, in the sense obviously the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is increased. Okay, and next one is increased hydrogen ion concentration and the decreased in the pH. That is what the acidity. And next one is increase the body temperature. Okay, and next one is excess of the 2,3-diphosphoglycerate. That is what DPG, and in the RBCs. It is also called as 2,3-BPG. Okay, and next one is shifted to left. When it shifted to left, in the sense the conditions are like in the fetal blood, because of the fetal hemoglobin has got more affinity for the oxygen than the adult hemoglobin. And next one is the decreased hydrogen ion concentration and the increase in the pH, that is what alkalinity. And next is if you see this diagram, the partial pressure of the oxygen and the oxygen saturation with the hemoglobin, so it is shifted to left, it is, okay. So, and comes to the normal in the last, the comparison in between the fetal hemoglobin and the adult hemoglobin. The affinity is more in case of the fetal hemoglobin, so for the oxygen acceptance, and whereas come to the, that is when it compared with the adult hemoglobin. Okay, and next, the Bohr effect. What is Bohr effect? In the sense, the Bohr effect is the effect by which presence of the carbon dioxide decreases the affinity of the hemoglobin for the oxygen. So, where the presence of the carbon dioxide in the blood, that obviously decreases the affinity of the oxygen combination. That is called as Bohr effect. This is proposed in the 1904 by Christian Bohr. And next one is, in the tissues, due to the continuous metabolic activities, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is very high and the partial pressure of oxygen is becomes low. And next one is transportation of the carbon dioxide. The carbon dioxide transportation in the four ways. One is in the dissolved state, that is about 7%, as in the form of carbonic acid, that is about negligible, that is in the minus, that in the sense points it is, okay. And next one is as the bicarbonate, that is about 63%, it is more. And next one is as in the carbamino compounds, that is about 30%, that is in the second place. But major carbon dioxide is transported by in the form of bicarbonates, that is about 63%. Okay, and the chloride shift here. What is this chloride shift? Chloride shift in the sense, so the chloride shift is hamburger phenomenon. This is also called as hamburger phenomenon. Is the exchange of the chloride ion in the form of the bicarbonate ions and in the RBC membrane. This is proposed by the Hamburger in 1892. This is what the chloride shift. And this chloride shift occurs when the carbon dioxide enters in the blood from the tissues. Carbon dioxide enters into the blood from the tissues. Immediately there is chloride shift. Okay. And in the plasma, plenty of the sodium chloride is present and it dissociates into the sodium and the chloride ions. And when the negativity charged bicarbonate ions moves out of the RBCs from the plasma, and so the negatively charged chloride ions so moved into the RBCs. And then there is the electrolyte equilibrium. So that is what ionic balance. It is called as ionic balance. And if you see this diagram, we'll come to know so how the carbon dioxide comes out of the cell, and when it comes inside of the RBCs and it binds with the hemoglobin, and immediately there is a chloride shift, that in the sense the plenty of the sodium chloride ions are present. When the carbon dioxide comes inside of the blood, immediately the sodium chloride which is present in the plasma or the blood, that is dissociated and that divided into the sodium ions and the chloride ions. And these chloride ions, so the ions which are bicarbonates comes outside of the RBCs. So immediately the chloride ions which is divided from the sodium ions goes inside of the RBCs for the ionic balance. So that is called as chloride shift. And if you see the carbon dioxide hemoglobin curve, so deoxygenated blood shows in the red color and the oxygenated blood shows in the blue color. Okay, so where the carbon dioxide concentration in the blood and the plotted on the y-axis and the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide plotted on the x-axis, so we'll get the graph like this. Okay, and Haldane effect. like the Bohr effect. So in case of the oxygen hemoglobin curve, that is Bohr effect, and in case of the carbon dioxide hemoglobin dissociation curve, that is Haldane effect. Haldane effect in the sense, so the effect by which the combination of the oxygen, which hemoglobin displaces the carbon dioxide from the hemoglobin, is called as Haldane's effect. This is by the Haldane in 1860. The excess of the oxygen contained in the blood causes the shift of the carbon dioxide dissociation curve towards right side. Okay, and next one, if you see the regulation of the respiration, how the respiration is regulated. In the sense, this respiration of the regulation normally by two ways. One is nervous or neural mechanism and another one is chemical mechanism. And first come to the nervous mechanism or the neural mechanism. In the neural mechanism, that is by the respiratory centers, efferent nerves and the efferent nerves. Respiratory centers are present in the medulla oblongata and the pons. Pons and medulla oblongata are the respiratory centers. That in the sense, respiratory centers are present in the pons and medulla. Pontine centers and the medullary centers. And efferent nerve fibers and the efferent nerve fibers. And if you see the respiratory centers, two types of the centers are present. One is medullary centers and another one is pontine centers. And come to the medullary centers, there are two types of these centers are present in the medulla. One is dorsal respiratory group of neurons and the another one is ventral group of respiration or ventral group of neurons. Dorsal group and ventral group. And in the pontine centers, epineuristic centers and another one is pneumotoxic centers. Epineuristic centers and pneumotoxic centers are the pontine centers and dorsal group and ventral group are the medullary centers. And if you see this, so we'll come to know what are the centers and where it present and how it shows effect on the lungs. Okay. If you see the regulation of this, there are two centers are present in the medulla and two centers are present in the pons. Okay, so first come to the pons. The pneumotoxic centers are in the upper position and below the pneumotoxic center. So every centers, that is the pneumotoxic centers are in 2 and next epineuristic centers are in 2 and next dorsal group of centers are in 2 and next one ventral group of centers are in 2. So each and every center is present in pair of the centers are present. Okay, so first, so the inspiratory centers is nothing but the dorsal group of neurons and next one expiratory centers are nothing but the ventral group of centers. Okay, so the ventral group of centers are the expiratory centers and the inspiratory centers are the dorsal group of centers. These two are present in the medulla. Okay, and these two are influenced by the pontine centers like pneumotoxic centers and the epineuristic centers. Okay, and here, so the inspiratory centers are controls all remain other centers. So first one is inspiration. And when the inspiration occurs, the inspiratory centers nothing but the dorsal group of neurons gets activated. See, so in that the third center is the dorsal group of neuron. Okay, and next one below that is the expiratory centers. That is what the ventral group of neurons it is. Okay, and here, so when the inspiration occurs, immediately there is activation of the dorsal group of neurons and immediately suppression of the expiratory centers, nothing but the ventral group of neurons. There is a mutual inhibition and the activation of the centers like dorsal group of neurons and the ventral group of the neurons. When the end of the inspiration, immediately there is inhibitory impulses from the pneumotoxic centers, that is the highest centers. So, and that sends inhibitory impulses to the epineuristic centers. Red colored line. Okay, and next one is, so the epineuristic centers sends impulses to the inspiratory centers. Nothing but dorsal group of neurons it is. Okay, and so at that time immediately there is activation of the expiratory neurons, nothing but the ventral group of neurons, and the suppression of the inspiratory neurons, nothing but dorsal group of neurons. And so the lungs, when the capacity is more, directly it sends impulses to the epignostic centers, and it sends impulses to the which one? Epignostic centers sends impulses to the inspiratory centers, and then there is a stoppage of the expiration and immediately activation of the inspiration. So just once check out yourself, okay, during the inspiration and expiration process, okay, inspiration continued by the expiration, and after completion of the expiration there is a small pause, immediate stoppage of the expiration, and then after the small gap, that in the sense after a small pause period, and the inspiration is continued. Okay, inspiration continued with the expiration and the pause period, and then it continues with the expiration. So that in the sense there is the exchange and the inhibition and the activation of the dorsal group of neurons and the ventral group of neurons by the, so accordingly. So when the dorsal groups are activated, immediately there is suppression or inhibition of the ventral group of the neurons. And when the lung capacity becomes more, immediately there is activation of the epignostic centers. That in the sense lung sends information to the epignostic centers, and that epignostic center sends that impulses to the inspiratory centers, nothing but the dorsal group of the neuron, and then there is a stoppage of the expiration and starting of the inspiration. When the inspiration is occurred, at that time the higher centers, that is what the pneumotoxic centers, sends inhibitory impulses to the epignostic centers for the stoppage of the inspiration, and then there is the epignostic centers sends information, that impulses to the inspiratory centers. And in case of the chemoreceptors, there are two types of the chemoreceptors present in the chemical regulation. That chemoreceptor sends information directly to the inspiratory centers, nothing but the dorsal group of the neurons. By that, the inspiration occurs. And next one is Hering-Brewer inflammation reflexes. So this Hering-Brewer reflex is nothing but so during the inspiration, so there is after the taking of the tidal volume, so more than 1000 ml, if the inspiration is more than the 1000 ml, and then the stretching of the lungs, okay, and after that there is a stimulation of the stretch receptors in the air passageway, and then impulses through the vagal efferent nerves and the inhibition of the dorsal group of neurons. Inhibition of the dorsal group of neurons and the inhibition of the inspiration. This phenomenon is called as Hering-Brewer inflation reflex. Okay, and next, chemical mechanism. This chemical mechanism is by the chemoreceptors, and the chemoreceptors are the sensory nerve endings. These are in two types. One is peripheral chemoreceptors and another one is central chemoreceptors. Central chemoreceptors present at the level of the lungs, and the peripheral chemoreceptors are present during the blood vessels, in the passageway of the blood vessels and the target tissues. When the oxygen level is decreased, immediately these peripheral type of the chemoreceptors gets activated, and so the major stimulus to this chemical type of stimulus for the chemoreceptors is the hypoxia. Hypoxia in the sense decreased partial pressure of the oxygen, and another one is hypercapnia. increased partial pressure of the carbon dioxide and increased hydrogen ion concentration. These three are the chemical stimulus for the chemoreceptors, and it sends information directly to the inspiratory centers, nothing but dorsal group of neurons. And the chemoreceptors are classified into two types: chemical central chemoreceptors and the peripheral chemoreceptors. And so when, if you see the possibility of this chemical regulation is, that is when the ventilation is decreased. So that goes into two ways. One is decreased partial pressure of the oxygen, and another one is increased partial pressure of the carbon dioxide. Obviously, so when the partial pressure of the oxygen is decreased, in the sense, obviously there is increase in the carbon dioxide pressure is increased. Okay, and so immediately there is stimulation of the peripheral chemoreceptors. When the partial pressure of the oxygen is decreased, immediately there is peripheral chemoreceptors gets activated, and the efferent impulses via the vagus nerve, hearing nerve, so and the aortic nerve. And by that stimulation of the dorsal group of neuron in the medulla, and by that efferent impulses to the respiratory muscles and the inspiration, and the increases the ventilation volume. This is one type. And when the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is increased, then there is diffusion of the carbon dioxide into the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, and then the stimulation of the central chemoreceptors. Here the central chemoreceptors, stimulation of the central chemoreceptors, and by that, so immediately there is stimulation of the dorsal group of neurons which are present in the medulla. So by that, so it sends that information to the respiratory muscles and then increase in the ventilation. This is what the chemical type of the regulation. And so next one is, so when the process of this respiration, so the thermoreceptors, how it regulates in the sense. So thermoreceptors sends the information to the cerebral cortex. This is the highest centers, and by that the cerebral cortex sends information to the respiratory centers which are present in the medulla oblongata and the pons. And the spinal, through the spinal motor neurons, the respiratory muscles gets activated and the process of respiration is possible. Okay, and so in this, so when this sending information, so one is peripheral chemoreceptors works for the when the partial pressure of the oxygen is decreased, and the central chemoreceptors are work for the when the partial pressure of the carbon dioxide is increased. Decreased oxygen, peripheral chemoreceptors; increased partial pressure of the carbon dioxide, central chemoreceptors. So whatever it is, and finally it comes through the respiratory centers, and the activation and the stimulation for the this respiratory muscles and increased in the ventilation. And next one is disturbance in the respiration. The first one is apnea. Apnea in the sense stoppage of the respiration or the cessation of the respiration, whether it is temporary or the permanent. Okay, the temporary apneas are like during the sleep sometimes. Okay, and next one is during the eating. So that is called as deglutition apnea. While eating, there is no respiration. That in the sense when the food in the pharynx, the respiration is stopped. That is called as deglutition apnea. And speech apnea, that in the sense while talking there is no respiration. Speech apnea it is. Sleep apnea, during the sleep. Okay, and next one is hyperventilation, that in the sense ventilation is increased. Hypoventilation, decreased ventilation, that in the sense inspiration is decreased. Frequency of the ventilation is decreased. And next one is hypoxia. Hypoxia in the sense decreased oxygen level at tissues. At tissue level, decreased oxygen contained, or the partial pressure of the oxygen is decreased. That is called as hypoxia. And this hypoxia is in 4 types. One is, out of these 4 types, the first one is stagnant hypoxia, histotoxic hypoxia, anemic hypoxia, hypoxic hypoxia. 4 types of the hypoxia are there. Okay, the stagnant hypoxia, in the sense the oxygens are decreased, that is called as stagnant hypoxia. And hypoxia, in the hypoxic hypoxia, in the sense the oxygen is decreased and at the same time the level of the oxygen in the tissues is also decreased. And next one is anemic hypoxia. Due to the decreased blood volume, due to the decreased RBCs, due to the anemia, if there is hypoxia, that is called as this one, anemic hypoxia. And another one is histotoxic hypoxia. Histotoxic hypoxia, in the sense oxygen supply is good and everything is clear, but the cells are not clear. Cells are facing some problems. That, in the sense, any toxicity at the tissue level, so that is called as histotoxicity or histotoxic hypoxia. Okay, and next one is oxygen toxicity. If the more oxygen is present, that is what the poisoning. And next one is hypercapnia, in the sense increased oxygen, carbon dioxide levels. Increased carbon dioxide levels is called as hypercapnia. And next one is hypocapnia. Decreased carbon dioxide levels is called as hypocapnia. And next one is asphyxia, in the sense in the combination of the hypoxia and hypercapnia, that in the sense oxygen level is decreased and the carbon dioxide levels are decreased. That condition is called as asphyxia. Asphyxia is a combination of the hypoxia and the hypercapnia. Hypoxia and hypercapnia, that is asphyxia. And next one is dyspnea. Disturbance in the respiration is called as dyspnea. Okay, and next one is periodic breathing, in the sense while taking the breath there is a disturbance and the somewhat stoppage in the respiration is called as periodic breathing. And next one is cyanosis, in the sense fluid, blue color. So, and the fluid accumulation in the sinus is called as cyanosis. Okay, and next, carbon monoxide poisoning. The carbon monoxide is increased in the air contained, that is called as carbon monoxide poisoning. And next one is atelectasis, and next pneumothorax, that in the sense the effusion of the pleural fluid and by that there is an infection to the lungs is called as pneumothorax. And next one is pneumonia and bronchial asthma. So where the condition, the fluid is present in the bronchi and then the disturbance is the respiration is called as bronchial asthma. And next one is pulmonary edema, in the sense, so the pulmonary, that in the sense the pleural fluid is increased, that is called as pulmonary edema. And pleural effusion, in the sense the pleural fluid is entered into the lungs is called as pleural effusion. And next one is pulmonary tuberculosis, in the sense TB, tuberculosis sites the bacteria is which infects to the lungs is called as pulmonary tuberculosis. And next, emphysema. So emphysema is nothing but where the gases exchange is possible but there is no proper utilization of the gases. Okay, so and next, in case of the high altitude, the oxygen levels are decreased. And next one, in the deep sea also the oxygen levels are decreased and the partial pressure of the oxygen is also decreased in the deep sea and at the same time in the high altitude. Okay, and for the protection for this, there is in the deep sea, so there is a apparatus, that is a dress, that is called as scuba. Scuba is nothing but self-contained respiration underwater breathing apparatus. self-contained underwater breathing apparatus is called as scuba. It maintains partial pressure of the oxygen, and it contains oxygen cylinders and everything is there. So that is called as scuba. This is what about the respiration and all about the respiration and respiratory system. This is according to the and as per my knowledge. Thank you very much.